Are tariffs sending us into recession? Maybe, maybe not. But here's what will. Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. The show is for you. You've been working so hard for that money, and you now want that money to start working harder for you today. You want that freedom. You want the cash flow right now. You want to become work optional, where you work because you want to, not because you have to. But most importantly, it's not just about getting rich. It's about living a rich life, because as you're blessed financially, you now have a greater capacity to bless the lives of those around you, creating a ripple effect. And that is what I'm here to do today. Thank you for tuning in again. Thank you for being such faithful listeners. You guys have been amazing. Hey, as a quick shout out to you guys, if you've been sharing this podcast with others, not to mention binging on these two, thank you so much. And please keep up the great work. We love having more subscribers. So please be sure to refer those people to our YouTube channel right now. Okay, let's talk about this recession, right? Is it coming or not? Is it going to be sparked by the tariffs or not? That is the big thing that we keep hearing about. Now, there's actually what was it, April 9th. Okay, so April 9th, JPMorgan Chase's CEO, Jamie Dimon, you guys have probably heard him before. If you haven't, he's usually one of the top economists that people will listen to a lot of times. I'm not saying he's right all the time, but here's what he did say. He was actually asked, it was on the TV show, what was it called, Mornings with Maria. They asked him if he expected a recession. His quote was, quote, "I am going to deter to my company, but I think probably that's a likely outcome," end quote. Now, of course, that got people a little bit freaked out, right? And this is during, of course, the previous week. I know this is 2 weeks later, but obviously we've seen the markets do all kinds of crazy stuff. All of it's usually blaming on tariffs. So the big question is it tariff related? Is it the tariffs that's doing it, or is it something else that's creating this kind of recession? Now, remember, we really haven't seen much of a recession. We saw this little blip in 2020. We saw the stock market go down in 2022, but they never really officially called it a recession. So what we've seen is, of course, 2020 had this little blip. Now, I'll tell you this, in 2019, at the end of 2019, I was calling for a recession, and I wasn't alone. Many people were. It was looking like it was about to turn that direction. But then with 2020, with COVID and everything else, and then the government decides to pump tons and tons of money into the marketplace, into our pockets, right? They kind of just deferred the recession to a later date. They kicked the can down the road, which is awesome. I mean, that was when Trump was president, so everybody blames Biden for COVID. No, Trump was in there too. Trump was just doing the same stuff. He was doing Operation Warp Speed. Remember that? Trying to get the vaccine out. He was doing all this kind of stuff at that time. He was the one working with Jay Powell, trying to see if they can get more money pumped into our pockets, right? So that was all happening then. And then Biden kept it going. And then we saw this everything bubble, as they've been calling it, right? Stock markets bubbled, real estate bubbled, especially in certain places like multifamily. We saw bubbles even in Bitcoin, right? We even saw Bitcoin bubble. It kind of came crashing a little bit during the middle of it and then popped right back up and broke over $100,000. We saw that happening. I mean, we've seen everything like money. And of course, that bubble, the biggest thing, of course, is when you put more money in people's pockets, inflation bubbled, right? We had this big inflation boost, which of course boosts the stock market. It boosts real estate as well. There's direct correlation between these. So we're starting to see everything just rise in price. Everything's going up. And that can also be deceiving, because then you think you're actually awesome at certain things if you own certain assets. And in truth, really, you're just riding a wave. This is true even if you're in real estate. You are literally just riding waves. I know I'm in that category too. Now, of course, if I'm going to gamble on something that's going to be riding waves, I'm going to do it in real estate much more than I will in the stocks. But now, of course, they're calling for a recession. Now, just so you know, stocks and recession, separate, right? And we've talked about some of the stock stuff here in recent episodes, but they are separate. The real question is, what causes a recession, right? Now, lots of, most of the usual common definition is talking about when you have at least 2 quarters of declining GDP, right? When things are starting to slow down, then they start calling it a recession. Now, although that's nice and all, that's deceiving, because if we look at, and I should probably start researching more to find some of the statistics specifically about what really is the true GDP when you take out government spending, because government spending has been accounted for about roughly 25% of GDP. Most of the increase we've seen in GDP the last few years has been government spending, right? The government spending money. That's why we've seen so many trillions of dollars being added to our national debt. And on top of that, we've also seen interest rates rise, which also affects our national debt, adding more and more interest to that money, right? So we're having these issues. This is why Doge is coming in. We've seen Trump and the Doge team with Elon Musk and everybody else trying to go in and clean up this spending that we've been doing, because without that spending, guess what? If we don't have this bad spending, of course, maybe we don't have to raise taxes. It's the other example. We balance the budget like Clinton talked about, and then we don't have to raise taxes as much, or maybe you don't have to raise them at all. Here's the thing though. What happens when government spending goes down? Well, the GDP goes down. Guess what? That creates a recession. So even though Jamie Dimon's talking about recession, he was more tagging on to tariffs, and his worry was about, trying to negotiate soon enough. Now, why is that such a big deal? Why do we care about that? Here's the real example. If economic strength, if you're looking for the economy, what makes it stronger? It's how fast money changes hands. That's what it's all about. It's the velocity of money. How fast is money exchanging hands? The faster it exchanges hands between all of us, the better we all prosper. The slower it exchanges, or the less money there is going back and forth, the less everybody makes, and the more that the economy collapses or contracts, depending on how you want to look at it. Collapse sounds a little dramatic, doesn't it? But it can collapse too. And so look back at 2008. 2008, what was happening is we were having just unreal growth, not just in the stock market, although the stock market hadn't really seen unreal growth. It just got back to where the high was and it came crashing down. But the banking industry, they were lending out tons and tons of money. They were just lending out money everywhere, irresponsibly, to the point where, especially went to subprime borrowers, although that wasn't everything. There was even good candidates with good credit that still also failed too. But subprime borrowers especially, it started tanking. We started lending to people with bad credit scores. They couldn't keep up with the payments, especially as things started happening. We also started seeing layoffs happen. And the next thing you know, we start seeing it crashing because now we don't have money to spend. This has always been the case. When there's less money to spend, or even if there is money to spend, but people are in fear, don't want to spend the money. If that money doesn't go out to be spent in those businesses don't make money. If they don't make money in profits, they don't pay their employees. If they don't pay their employees, they start laying off employees because they can't pay them. And of course, they lay off employees. They don't have money to spend. They start holding on to whatever they've got, and it just cycle continues, and that's why it contracts. Vice versa, if you have high employment, which we have seen, right? We've seen a lot of people employed. You start seeing that people have money to spend, especially when the government starts pumping money into their own hands and their pockets to stimulate things. That does create a bubble. So it creates this big bubble, right? And then, of course, this bubble keeps going and going. And at some point, that bubble does have to pop. It does have to correct. That's normal. By the way, a recession is not a bad thing. It's normal. But what happens, though, is that the bigger, as I've said many times, the bigger the party, the bigger the hangover. We've had an amazing party. We've had an amazing run. It's been rough. And now in real estate, we've seen it happen more, right? We've seen real estate the last couple of years, really now going on almost 3 years. We've seen certain parts of real estate have a hard time. Even residential real estate, even though there's high demand for properties, thing is, because of those higher interest rates, people don't want to sell the homes when they have these low interest rates to go into a higher one. They want to basically have a higher payment for a house that's the same as what they just had before. So as a result, we've kind of seen a contraction, and that's why we haven't seen real estate prices go up much. I also predict in the next few years, we probably won't see a whole lot of appreciation in real estate. Cash flow, sure. Appreciation, not so much, right? And so that's the thing. That's the kind of current market we're in. Now, one thing that Dimon did say, he did say that when it came to debt, especially with business debt, he doesn't foresee like a huge collapse of businesses not be able to pay their debt. However, there is another aspect you've got to be watching, because it's not just businesses around the world, although there's a big aspect of that. The biggest thing we got to watch for is the consumer, the everyday average American. What's going on with them? Now, if you start looking up statistics, like I like to see what's happened with car loan delinquencies. Mortgages usually is the last thing to go. We're starting to see a slow uptick there too, but we're also seeing with auto delinquencies. So for example, at the end of 2024, auto loan delinquencies that were at least 90 days late was 4.8%. 90 days is, it's pretty hard to go 90 days late. I'll tell you from my own personal experience, they start trying to find your car and repossess it, usually after about 45 days, right? If you go just past 30 days, you usually won't be able to go 60 days without them hiding the car. So that's serious delinquencies. But what's the 30-day late right now? 8.1% as of the end of 2024, which is up from 7.7%. That's like a 5% increase. So what we're seeing is now like about 1 in 12 people, borrowers, auto loan borrowers, are actually 30 days late. 1 in 12. That's significant, guys. I know on the mortgage side, depending on what you're looking at, see the conventional mortgage is not so bad, but FHA and VA loans, veterans loans, those kind of things, those ones, some of them are as high as 11% delinquency on the FHA loan side. That is a big, big deal. And we're watching that number increase. That means people are running out of cash. The cash that was gifted to them by the government, now it's dried up. Savings, by the way, I actually told somebody on my team, I said, listen, if you have even $2,000 of savings, you have more money saved up than 80, more money saved up than 78% of, of Americans today. Only about 22% of people have $2,000 or more. 22%. Think about that. Everybody's just a little bit away. And I know that we haven't heard a whole lot about unemployment. They do say we got to watch for it, but I'm hearing more and more people getting laid off. I don't know about you, but I'm seeing not just people at the service level, like, we used to hear about people being laid off, like, in restaurants and whatnot. That was more like 2020. Now I'm seeing people that are good, qualified, this could be senior executives or middle managers, heck, even people that are even at different levels, whether it's entry level or higher level people are getting laid off right now. So companies are starting to trim the fat. They are starting to cut back more and more to keep their profits up because they're seeing the hit. They're seeing the hit to themselves. They're seeing inflation hit them. They're starting to see it hit them from the wage standpoint. Remember, now wages aren't going up as much as they were because we're trying to keep up inflation. Now companies are saying we can't do this anymore. Otherwise, what we're going to do, and this is just like what happened with raising the minimum wage, is what they go do. Of course, they go pick their highest skilled employee and make them do more work, right? And get rid of all the people that weren't doing the work. So they're trying to find the most skilled labor. If you've been following this podcast, you're probably looking for great ways to create passive income right now, right? Well, we got you covered here with Central Lending. Central Lending specializes in alternative investments that actually are designed to create steady returns and long-term financial security for you and your family. Now, they prioritize transparency. They love, building those strong relationships, giving you that confidence and peace of mind, knowing that you have your money working harder for you, so you don't have to work so hard for that money. You want to learn more how to do that? Go to centrallending.com and check out what they've got today to create your passive income and wealth creation right now. But even though they are skilled, some of them are just having to cut in their certain departments. So I'm seeing this in the IT. We've already seen that the last couple of years anyways. I'm seeing the banking sector. Things are happening there. So they're not talking about stress. But remember, Dimon is the CEO of JPMorgan Chase. He's not going to say banks are failing right now, because if he did, what do you think is going to happen to their own bank stock? It's going to collapse, right? So they don't want to do that. So just be aware. That's what I'm watching. So when I watch for this stuff, I start to look for that. Now, we come back to the tariffs, right? Are tariffs putting us in a recession? Here's the thing, coming back to that speed of money, velocity of money, here's where it does create a recession. If there isn't a way to negotiate, if we actually get to a place where maybe we do start jacking up tariffs like China's trying to do, and then US starts to fight back with it, right? And it does start to increase prices. This did happen before. See, what he's trying to do is force countries to say, let's get our companies built over here in America, and then they stay in America. That creates more jobs in America. So he's trying to create more jobs here. That's ultimately his little playbook, right? He's just trying to negotiate this stuff, get tariffs down. Now, if he can get tariffs down, that saves the company, saves us more money. If he does have tariffs on these countries, and also the countries say, I don't want to pay those tariffs, let me build a factory, like Toyota did this already, Mercedes did this too already, where they started building factories on US soil. That means more jobs for Americans, right? So now he becomes popular again. That could actually strengthen the economy internally. But this also happened in 1934. In 1934, there was a Smoot-Hawley Act that went into place where they did try to tariff the crap out of the different countries. And what ended up happening is it backfired, because all of a sudden exchange stopped between countries. The trading between countries stopped. Remember, we actually import a lot more than we export. When that starts drying up a little bit, yeah, they might buy American, but if it's more expensive, people may not buy it, especially if they're feeling pinched for money. So that actually put us deeper into a recession by doing that. This same thing could happen here. We could go deeper in recession, but I actually believe the tariffs will probably be resolved by around May or so. I think by May, everything that's going to happen is going to pretty much happen, and that's done. That won't be the news item. Remember, news always wants to try to keep you hooked. So the next news item I think you're going to start hearing about is either one, what's going to happen to the 2025 tax plan because the Trump tax plan ends this year, right? So that's going to be resolved before really by the fall, hopefully. If it might get stressed into the winter time, so maybe it ends up being later in the year. We got that issue. We got Social Security. That's still an issue. All this stuff. I mean, there's plenty of issues to worry about right now. More than this, I do believe there are more layoffs and more unemployment that's happening right now. And I think I just think between the tariffs and everything else, we just need a retraction. We need a recession. It's just, it has to be brought back into balance. That's normal. But that might mean that your money's going to suffer, especially if you're in stocks right now. If you're in stock market, you're going to probably watch your money disappear. Okay. That will happen. It always does at some point. Now, will it come back? Yes. But remember, it loses much more quickly than it returns. Be aware of that. I actually warned a lot of my own clients. I said, hey guys, just so you know, and this is before, having these podcasts come out, and this is right when we saw the big up, surge in that one day. They said best day ever since 2008. And I told all my clients, I said, hey, listen, guys, I can't predict the future, but it's very possible that 10% gain in one day might be your ticket to say, I'm going to capture whatever gains I have if I'm in the market still. Now, a lot of our clients are not in the market anymore or have very little money in the market that they don't care about, but some still have money there. I said, if you're looking for that sign, that might be your sign because that quick of recovery is unnatural. And now, even as I'm recording this, it's now the 14th of April. They're like, hey, look, we got the second positive trading day in a row, but it's coming right up against that resistance. It's very possible that, even though it's around 5,400 or whatever it is on the S&P, it's very possible that it might get up a little bit higher and then bounce down again. And so be aware of that. That again, this is where suckers get born every minute inside the stock market. This is why most people just hang on tight and don't do anything because they don't know what to do. They get scared. The average American gets scared, but institutional investors bail out. They already pull their money out of the market. Many of them already have. This is why you've seen the market drop as significantly as it has. They already knew to pull their money out. Buffett did it last year in 2024, pulled tons of his money out to be liquid in cash to wait for these values to drop. And they've got a lot more room to drop. Remember the Buffett Indicator, right? Buffett Indicator shows that we're still about 180% of where we should be. That means we're about double of where the market should be right now. And that's based on current GDP. What if the government does start cleaning up their spending? What if they do stop spending? GDP goes down, which might show that we're in a recession, but that also means the overvaluation of the stocks even higher, meaning they have to come down further. So be careful, right? That just means that everything's overinflated in price, right? And everybody's going to tell you, hey, just keep putting your money in, like I mentioned last week, about dollar cost averaging. Be careful. Be very careful because that's how people get suckered. That's how they get suckered in the market. So anyways, I don't want to overly, go into this too much, but are the tariffs going to lead to recession? I think they might be kind of the excuse, but I believe we're going to recession regardless of tariffs, regardless. I think we're already there. That just might help, kind of push us into that recession area faster. What it means for you though, is how are you going to protect your money? Keep your money safe. Keep it liquid. I believe that real estate's going to be a safer place depending on where you put it. But for the most part, that's going to preserve your value. That could be a good place to have your money. Ideally, even better if it cash flows, if you're producing income from it, good income. If you're getting this return on your equity, you're like, oh, wow, I'm making 3% return on equity. Not good. Maybe you can move that money elsewhere to do better, right? Also, this is why we get a big uptick in infinite banking policies right now because people just want a safe place to store money and still earn 6%. Remember, Vanguard predicted the next 10 years will only be 2.8 to 4.8% average in the market for the next 10 years. But right now we're seeing 6% or more with some companies, but about 6% or so in life insurance right now. So again, a good place you could be storing your money, keep it safe, guaranteed, also protected from losses to creditors, and it's tax-free, right? So that's, if you want to know what I'm doing, that's exactly it. I'm storing a lot of money in my life insurance policies, a little bit in the bank, although I wonder how stable banks are still to this day, I wonder. And I also got money in real estate, but in different types of real estate. So I'm not in one just bucket, right? I'm not just in turnkey rentals, although I have some of those. I'm not just lending my money, although lending has been awesome the last few years. And it's not just in raw land or in multifamily, although most of my money's out of multifamily by this point. But I'm looking forward in 2025, possibly seeing some better multifamily deals. So that's what I'm doing with my money. I'm not saying this as investment advice. I'm just saying what I'm doing. But again, I'm trying to stay more liquid now than I have before. Still investing, but investing at a slower rate than it was even just 5, 6, 7 years ago. Now I'm still investing, I'm reinvesting some money, but I'm also taking some of my chips off the table and storing it in safe cash, waiting for the time that there is, confirmation of these things, confirmation of recessions, confirmation of down markets. And by the way, the best time to get in to buy is when nobody wants to buy it. When everybody says to get out, that's the best time to get in. When everybody still keeps telling you to stay in or get in is usually the time that you want to get out, right? That's what you want to do. Remember, when everybody's greedy, be fearful. When everybody's fearful, get greedy. That's what Warren Buffett says. So sage advice, I think, in general, and we'll have future episodes talking about that as things start to update. But I just want to kind of talk about that right now. Again, tariffs in the grand scheme of things, not a huge deal as the media is making out to be. It's a less deal. Tariffs won't necessarily create and continue the recession. However, it could definitely be a portion of what's already the recession. It could actually be that little extra nudge to push us over the fence. So that's my little thoughts on tariffs. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think is happening right now. Is this good or bad? Do you like what's going on with the tariff negotiations or not? Please say so in the comments below. Guys, make a wonderful and prosperous week. We'll see you later.